بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد. As the month of Ramadan passes very quickly, we all have a chance to get our share of the rewards and the blessings of this month by doing a few simple things. One of them is we start reading the Quran more regularly. The Quran has a very strong connection with this month. شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن هدى للناس وبينات من الهدى والفرقان. It might sound overly simplistic, but we cannot stress enough the importance of increasing our recitation of the Quran during this month. Our recitation of the Quran will do a few things. The first thing is that whether you understand the Quran or not, you get reward, immense reward for every letter of the Quran that you recite. So for example, the hadith says that for every letter you get 10 hasanat, 10 rewards. Now one reward is such that on the day of judgment, if somebody is missing one reward, they're one reward short from entering into Jannah, or their one sin over the limit and they have to go to Jahannam, then that one reward is going to mean more to them than anything else in the world. And the Quran describes what will happen to those people, how they will be going, running, scurrying from place to place, from person to person, trying to get that one reward. So every letter of the Quran is going to give us 10 rewards. That's just reciting it. Whether you understand it or not is another matter. The other thing is that the recitation of the Quran is a form of the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as is the case with all forms of remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, a few things happen right away. First of all, it has a cleansing effect on the heart. The heart is cleansed. Cleansed from what? It is cleansed from many of our wrong tendencies, many negative attitudes, our inclination towards various types of mistakes, and also cleaning our heart from the effects of mistakes and sins that have been committed in the past. So it has a cleansing effect. The other thing is that it has a softening effect. It softens our heart. Softening the heart means that the heart becomes more receptible to reminders, more receptible to advice. It becomes more receptible to guidance. The opposite of that is when sins accumulate and they're not cleansed. The heart is neither purified nor softened. It becomes rusty and dirty, and it becomes very hard and rigid. The hadith gives the example of an overturned bowl. A bowl, a dirty, black bowl that has been turned upside down, and no matter what you do, it's not going to hold anything because the bowl is upside down, and plus it's dirty. Even if you were able to get something inside, you could not benefit from it, whether it was milk or honey or water or anything that you put inside that bowl. It's going to get soiled because the bowl itself is soiled. The bowl itself is dirty, it's rusty, and it very badly needs a cleaning. So the second and third effects are that it cleanses the heart and it softens the heart. When the heart becomes soft, then even small reminders and infrequent reminders are enough. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives the example of those people who didn't soften their hearts in time. And He says, ألم يأن للذين آمنوا أن تخشع قلوبهم لذكر الله وما نزل من الحق ولا يكونوا كالذين أوتوا الكتاب من قبل فطال عليهم الأمد فقست قلوبهم وكثير منهم فاسقون. They were people who were given divine revelation before, but they did not turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with His remembrance. Reminders came and went. They did not benefit from them. Eventually their hearts became hard. And then the time came when it was too late. Even when the prophets would talk to them and advise them or warn them or encourage them, nothing worked. And at that point, كَلَّا بَلْ رَانَ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ مَا كَانُوا يَكْسِبُونَ. Their own deeds have formed this layer over their hearts that doesn't allow anything to penetrate. So the recitation of the Quran is going to cure this. It's going to remove those layers, those crusts of sins, of mistakes, of wrong tendencies, and they are going to allow the heart to soften up. The other thing is that every remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brings a person closer to Allah and gets their sins forgiven. So as we are reciting Quran, innal hasanata yudhibna sayyi'at. If every letter is bringing us good deeds, if recitation of every letter is bringing us at least 10 hasanat, then those hasanat are also eradicating our sins. So by default, whenever we engage in a good deed, that good deed starts wiping away our minor sins. So much so that if a person continues to do good deeds and stops the sins for a while, then the good deeds wash away the effects of the sins as well. Now, one is the sin itself and the other is the effect of the sin. Both need to be cleansed and purified from the heart. It's kind of like when something falls on your clothes and stains your clothes. One is the substance itself that has fallen on your clothes, and then there's a stain that it leaves behind. So for example, if somebody's spilled ketchup on their clothes, then you can get rid of the ketchup pretty quickly, but that stain is going to take a little bit of work. It's going to take a little bit of effort to remove. Similarly, one is the sin itself, to get the sin forgiven. And then there is the effect of the sin, the residual effect that it leaves inside the heart. It needs to be scrubbed and polished, and it needs to be removed. So the recitation of the Quran is going to do this as well. In fact, the Prophet ﷺ said that there are two things that revive the hearts. These hearts, they become weak and sick, ill, and they almost kind of go into a vegetative state, almost a kind of death. And the Prophet ﷺ advised us that these hearts are treated by the remembrance of death, by frequent remembrance of death, and frequent recitation of the Quran. Frequent remembrance of death means that a person keeps in mind the fact that this world is transitory, it's temporary, and we're all just travelers here, and it's only a matter of time before we have to leave this world. Therefore, the heart should not get too attached to the things of this world, the worldly belongings, possessions, conditions. We should stay in this world as if we are travelers or as if we are visitors, and not make this world as if it is going to be our permanent place, because the world is no one's permanent place. So frequently remembering death in the sense of preparing for death, that okay, I'm going to meet my Creator soon. What am I doing to make myself into a better person? What am I doing to clear my accounts? What am I doing to get rid of the negative stuff that's in my account? How can I get rid of that before I leave this world? And recitation of the Quran. The other thing the recitation of the Quran will compel us to do is it will build our connection with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you are going to feel compelled from inside to try to understand it. So while you might not understand it today, or you might understand only small portions of it, reading the Quran is going to drive you to try to understand it. It's a natural process, and it's only a matter of time before you pick up a translation of the Quran, a tafsir, a commentary of the Quran, or you start increasing your studies regarding the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the Quran, as I said, the Quran has a very strong bond with this month. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, while describing the connection of Quran with this month, شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن, He says, هُدًى لِلنَّاسِ, it is a guidance for people. وَبَيِّنَاتٍ مِّنَ الْهُدَى وَالْفُرْقَانِ. So the Quran brings guidance. It has very clear, it has clear prompts, bayinat, very clear prompts in the sense of instructions and prohibitions, in the sense of morals and ethics, in the sense of um, steps to take, choices to make and not to make, in sometimes in the context of stories, telling us the decisions made by previous people and the outcomes that arose because of those decisions. Sometimes telling us about good people, sometimes telling us about bad people, and all kinds of good people and all kinds of bad people. It's not just one type of good person that's being spoken about in the Quran, and not just one type of bad person that's being spoken about in the Quran. Some people are criticized in the Quran not because of their so much of their actions, then as the Quran is criticizing their attitudes. They had attitudes that were problematic. Of course, that affected their actions, but the Quran is addressing their attitudes. For other people, it's their approach to life. For other people, it's the way they treated other people. For other people, it's the way they ruled. For other people, it's the way they were ruled. In some cases, it was the leaders. In some cases, it was the followers. In some cases, it was both. So the Quran gives us all kinds of perspectives on life, all the situations that we will ever fall into. The Quran addresses them and gives us guidance. It teaches us how to navigate through those conditions successfully. So once we increase our connection with the Quran just by reciting it, we will be compelled to see, what is it that I'm reading? What is it? Am I just reciting it for the sake of reciting it? Or is there a message here? What is that message? What is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala saying to me? So this is one of the simple things that we can do to increase the quality of our Ramadan. And it needs dedication and devotion, and it means that sometimes you have to get rid of the distractions. Whatever it is that's deterring us, we need to get rid of it. We need to address it, acknowledge that, look, this thing is getting in the way of myself and my recitation of the Quran. It could be my own device, that I'm spending time on my device where I don't necessarily need to. I'm done my schoolwork, but now I'm just surfing the net. Now I'm just watching things on YouTube. But if I had used this time in a different way, it could have been channeled towards other activities, other actions. Sometimes it's just our own laziness. We're not doing anything. We're just kind of wandering around the house and just passing time. But that time could have been very productively used. And sometimes it's people around us. It's our social networks. It could be someone in the family. Whatever it is, address it, acknowledge it, and try to get around it. Keep yourself, just like we show up in class knowing that our role is going to be marked, and either we will be marked present or absent or late. We should keep in mind that the same thing is happening in terms of our good deeds. So present, absent, late, and then once we enter the session, paying attention, not paying attention. You're all familiar with secta entries that your teachers put in. Yeah, I wasn't engaged, wasn't paying attention, didn't respond to my questions, didn't do their work, wasn't really present, kept talking to their neighbor. All of the same checks and balances come into play in our worships as well. So first of all, were we present? Did we do it or did we not do it? Did we show up or did we not show up? And if we showed up, did we do it on the time that we had fixed? And that's another important thing. It's important to set times. If we don't set times, nothing gets done. If you don't set a time for your homework is not going to get done. If you don't put aside chunks of time to do your assignment and timetable it, your assignment is just going to linger till the last minute, and then you'll be one of those people that's staying up all night just to submit that assignment. But if you had timetabled it and used a little bit of time management, you would have been able to do it on time. Same thing happens in ibadah. Now what happens, many people, they're completely spaced out in the first few days of Ramadan, and they're just about fasting. They haven't taken anything seriously. And then the next thing they know, 10 days have passed. Then they're trying to figure out what to do. 20 days have passed. And then they hear about Laylatul Qadr. Okay, fine, I'm going to stay up that night and try to make up for the whole month. It doesn't work like that. This is a month. This is a month in which the whole month is an exercise. So recitation of Quran, let's set times for it. Let's bring quality into it. All of you, alhamdulillah, have a chance to learn how to read the Quran at the school. So use your ability to read, apply it, and the more you read, the better you'll become at reciting. The more fluent your recitation will be, the clearer it will be, and the more power there will be in your recitation. The other thing is your salat. There are some people who fast, but they delay their salat. They're not praying it on time. They're not praying it regularly. Remember that fasting will not make up for salat. It will not take the place of salat. So fasting and not praying is not a wise thing to do, because prayer is an even greater obligation than fasting. Fasting comes once a year, and prayer is 5 times a day. Do not compromise your prayer for anything. The third thing is that while we're in this environment of being enclosed and being restrained or restricted, it's tempting to get into a lot of conversations about people and just talk, like gossip, whether it's something on the news, something that happened, the other day with someone, something that you saw on social media, something you saw on YouTube. There's a lot of talk that happens that's not really, A, it's not beneficial, and B, it could even be harmful. There are some types of speech that are extremely, extremely harmful. Once, the Prophet ﷺ was told about 2 women who were fasting, but the fast became unbearable for them. So much so that they thought they're going to die if they keep fasting. Now, everyone's fasting. It's not just these 2. But for some reason, their fast became extremely, extremely difficult. So the Prophet ﷺ advised the people who came to tell him about them that you tell them both to try to vomit. Try to vomit. So they both induced vomiting, and what came out was a big shock and a surprise for everyone. Instead of whatever food they might have consumed, what came out was blood and flesh, chunks of raw meat and blood. So these women themselves were shocked, and whoever was there was also very disturbed by this. So this news was brought back to the Prophet ﷺ, and he said, yes, their bellies fasted from food and drink, but their tongues did not fast from the reputation and the honor of other people. In other words, while their bellies were hungry, fasting, their tongues were busy gossiping and backbiting people. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, made their fast unbearable. So that tells us that the more we observe the guidelines of fasting, the spiritual guidelines of fasting, the easier it will be. And secondly, when we breach the conditions of fasting, it becomes very difficult to fast. And in this case, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to show the community that this is actually what happens, because the Quran speaks about backbiting as eating the flesh of your dead brother after a person has died, and then you go and eat their flesh. It's such a disgusting thing. It's such a despicable thing. It's such a lowly thing to do. But that is the example of someone who is backbiting someone. So in fasting, it becomes even worse. One hadith says that fasting is like a shield as long as you don't rip the shield or tear the shield yourself. So someone asked, how can you tear the shield? How do you tear the shield? Yani, it's a shield that protects you from all wrong things. So how is the shield torn? The Prophet ﷺ in one hadith said that by lying or by backbiting. So we have to be extremely careful about the way we use our tongues, telling a lie while we're fasting or speaking about someone. Now remember, backbiting is saying anything about someone that they wouldn't like. talking about someone in a way that they would be displeased, they wouldn't like it, or they would be hurt if they heard about it, even if the thing that you're saying is true. If it's untrue, then this becomes buhtan, this becomes a slander, which is even worse. But backbiting is anything negative. So let's cleanse our tongues from saying anything negative about anyone, especially in this month. If we practice in this month, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us the ability to continue this good practice for the rest of the year as well. The good deeds that we start, the good habits that we start now. So back to recitation of Quran, praying our salat, guarding our tongue. If we start these good practices in the month of Ramadan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us tawfiq to continue them for the rest of the year, inshallah, if we have the intention to do so. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq. May Allah accept our worships, our prayers, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us the ability to spend the rest of this month in the best way possible, in a way that brings us very, very close to Him, and in a way that draws His mercy upon us and the world. وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.